President Trump is demanding that Democrats in Congress end their investigations as talk of impeachment swirls on Capitol Hill. A CBS News poll found 53% of Americans say they agree with the president. They want Democrats to drop their inquiries into Russian interference and possible obstruction of justice and move on to other issues. But the number of Democrats who want lawmakers to continue investigating is growing. 73% want their representatives to keep at it. So Nancy Cortez has more on the escalating feud between the White House and Congress.
Get these phony investigations over with.
The president viewed his walkout as a power play. Speaker Pelosi called it a temper tantrum.
I pray for the president of the United States, and I pray for the United States of America.
To watch what happened in the White House would make your jaw drop.
Their standoff put a stake in what was one of their few areas of common ground.
I told Senator Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, I want to do infrastructure. You can't do it under these circumstances.
White House sources tell CBS News that President Trump, an avid cable news watcher, exploded after he saw Pelosi say this just before their meeting.
We believe that the president of the United States is engaged in a cover-up.
President Trump walked into the meeting with a dozen Democratic leaders and walked out again 3 minutes later.
I don't do cover-ups.
Slamming their investigations at a hastily called Rose Garden press conference.
When I went to Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, I don't say, oh, let's call Russia. Maybe they can. It's a hoax.
Both Pelosi and Mr. Trump see benefits to their tough talk. Pelosi gets points with increasingly restless liberal members.
I think he should be impeached.
His campaign chairman is in prison. Don't tell me there's not enough to debate here.
And Mr. Trump's aides say he feels punching back is a good re-election strategy.
The I word. Can you imagine?
All right, so Nancy Cortez is on Capitol Hill. Nancy, the president is ruling out any sort of bipartisan cooperation. He wants Democrats to stop investigating him. Of course, legislating is what Congress is supposed to do, but they're also supposed to be a branch that, performs oversight over the White House. So he's sort of telling them, don't do one half of your job if you want to get the other half of your job done. Where is this standoff going?
Well, it looks like it's not going anywhere very fruitful for the American public, especially if the two sides aren't going to work together on one of the only areas that they previously saw eye to eye on, which was infrastructure. Truth be told, though, Anne-Marie, it was always going to be a very heavy lift for the White House and the congressional Democrats to try to hammer out an infrastructure plan, not because they couldn't agree on how to spend the money. There's a lot of agreement that our nation's infrastructure is in very rough shape, and there are all kinds of ideas about projects that could really use the funding. The big debate was going to be over how you pay for it, and Republicans here in Congress were going to demand that much, if not all of that $2 trillion worth of infrastructure spending was offset by cuts elsewhere. The White House knew that the Democrats would not go for a lot of those cuts, and so Democrats are arguing that the president's walkout yesterday had less to do with his anger over these investigations that, after all, have been going on for quite some time. They're nothing new to him, but had more to do with his wariness of getting into a protracted discussion over a package that he knows he'd have a lot of trouble selling to his own party at the end of the day.
That's right. And, but he did bring up these investigations. The Democrats are not going to be slowing down anytime soon. And I think, with the White House suggesting that people ignore subpoenas and refusing to hand over documents, these investigations are likely to drag out even longer.
Oh, I mean, they'll drag out throughout President Trump's entire time in the White House, whether it is 4 years or 8 years. Yeah. And frankly, investigations plagued the Obama administration the entire time he was in office, too. Just think of how many Benghazi investigations there were here on Capitol Hill. So that is not entirely surprising, although you're right, that because the White House is trying to stonewall the congressional Democrats' attempts to get documents and bring witnesses in to testify, that Democrats are having to resort to court fights, which can be lengthy. But interestingly, we saw 2 rulings just this week. So things are moving a little quicker than many Democrats themselves probably expected. And in both cases, those judges determined that the House of Representatives had the right to demand the president's financial records, even from a time previous to when he held public office. So this is something that Democrats see see as a victory and a sign that they are on strong legal footing when it comes to all of these investigations they're conducting and the types of materials that they're seeking to get their hands on.
Speaking of that, the Justice Department said they're willing to hand over the unredacted version of the Mueller report, underlying documents, to the intelligence committees, both House and Senate. How soon could members be going through that material?
Well, it's not hard for the Justice Department to set that up because it had already done so when it offered this same unredacted version of the Mueller report to top Democrats and Republicans here on Capitol Hill about a month ago. The problem then remains the problem now, however, which is that many Democrats believe they shouldn't look at that mostly unredacted version. They should hold out for a fully unredacted version. So even though there has been some headway made in talks between the Justice Department and the House and Senate Intelligence Committees, they're trying to hold off a contempt citation that's brewing in the House Intelligence Committee. Whether those lawmakers will actually go into the room and take a look at that material at the end of the day remains to be seen.
All right, Nancy Cordes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.